Hey there, welcome my friends. It's the first week of August and that means it's time for the monthly Cape Coral real estate market update video. I do one of these every single month. We're just going to really take a deep dive into the statistics and the facts and the figures of the Cape Coral real estate market. And we're going to look at mainly figures that were put up last month. So we're going to be taking a look at July 2025's numbers. I'm going to give you kind of an overview of the entire market, and then we're really going to dive deep into the different categories. So we're going to look into specifically non-waterfront single-family homes. Of course, we'll look at the Gulf access home real estate market, and then we'll take a look at condos and townhomes, vacant lots, and we'll finish up the statistics portion of this video with the rental properties. I think those are an important part of this real estate market. So we'll cover those, and then I'm going to finish everything up with some advice if maybe you're a buyer in this current Cape Coral real estate market, or some advice if maybe you're a seller in a little bit tougher Cape Coral real estate market. So make sure you stick around for those. I'm going to give you some really good advice, and then we'll kind of wrap everything up and summarize what we're looking at right now in the Cape Coral real estate market. But if you're not familiar with this channel, my name is Dustin Guthrie. I'm a longtime resident of Southwest Florida and Cape Coral, and I've been a full-time real estate broker here in Cape Coral for almost 20 years now, and I do one of these videos every single month, and these are longer form videos. They're usually over an hour, and I'm going to put some chapters down there so you can jump around if you don't want to spend the entire hour going through this entire report. But these monthly reports are in addition to the weekly videos that I just put out on this channel, and those are just really useful information. Sometimes we're covering some insurance things or looking at new developments or new things that are going on in the city of Cape Coral. So if you are interested in the city of Cape Coral in Southwest Florida, which I imagine you are if you're watching this Cape Coral real estate market video, I want to encourage you to subscribe if you haven't already done so. Hit that subscribe button so you can be notified whenever there is a new video every single week. I think you'll get a lot out of these videos that I put out. I just try to give you a lot of really good, useful information. I figure if I can provide some value to you and give you some really good information, then you probably will remember me when the time does come and you do need a realtor here anywhere in Southwest Florida if you're buying or selling a place. So I would encourage you to reach out to me anytime I can help you. My contact information is right there on the screen, but it's also down in the description of this video. And you can call, text, or email me anytime. I would love to hear about your real estate goals and tell you a little bit about how I can help you out with those. So with all that spiel out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the Cape Coral real estate market for August 2025. And I always start out just for fun by showing you the lowest sales of the month in the entire city, and then we'll jump over and look at the highest sales of the month. It kind of gives you a low bar and a high bar of what the Cape Coral real estate market has put up in the last month. So again, we're talking about July 2025, but let's go ahead and dive right in. We'll start off with the lowest sales of the month in a few different categories. All right, so the lowest sales of the entire month of July 2025 for all of the city of Cape Coral. We're going to look at a few different categories, starting with the lowest condo sale, and then we'll look at the lowest single-family home sale and finish up this segment with the lowest Gulf access home sale. I know a lot of the folks out there are interested in Gulf access properties, so I want to make sure to cover those. But this past month, the lowest condo sale was this one right here. 608 Southeast 6th Street, unit number E. That's in the Coral K condo. That's right near City Hall, if you know where that is. It's right next to Cultural Park there in the southeast section of Cape Coral. And we got under $100,000 this past month for condos. This property was listed at $93,000. It sold for $90,000 right at the end of July. Was just a little one bedroom, one bath. That's pretty typical, just a little bit over 700 square feet. So a pretty small little condo built in 1981. It was sold furnished, and for all intents and purposes, it looked like it was a move-in ready condo. Didn't really need to do anything in there, at least at first glance. There's just maybe some updates that needed to be done. A lot of that looks to be maybe original to that 1981. But this thing was only on the market for a little bit over a month. And sold pretty close to list price. Again, $93,000. It was priced pretty aggressively. We haven't seen too many condos or single-family homes get under $100,000 in the last couple of years. So congratulations to the buyers and the sellers. Again, just a little one-bedroom, one-bath, built in 1981, first-floor condo. But that's a pretty darn good price, $90,000. And that was the lowest sale of the month for condos in July of 2025. All right, let's jump over to the lowest single-family home sale. There was actually, I'm going to give you this one, but there was a lower one. There was actually one that dipped under $100,000 for single-family homes as well. And believe it or not, it was a one-bedroom home. And I can't tell you the last time I saw a one-bedroom home, but that was virtually a teardown, so I didn't really want to count it in this week's video. So we'll take a look at one that was a little more move-in ready. And the lowest sale was this one right here for single-family homes, 213 Southeast 47th Street. That's right near downtown, Cape Coral Parkway and Palm Tree Boulevard. It's a really good area over there in the Southeast Cape. But this was an older property. This was built in 1963, a little 2-bedroom, 2-bath, just over 1,000 square feet. Was listed at $200,000 and was on the market for about 2.5 months. And it looked to be a couple of things maybe wrong with that property. I know it was difficult to get reasonable insurance for something like this. It looked like it had a little bit older of a roof. This was in a flood zone, so 1963 in a flood zone is going to come with a pretty darn high flood insurance rate. But this one ended up selling for $50,000 under list price. $150,000 is what it ended up closing at right in the middle of July. So to go from $200,000 and only being on the market for about 2.5 months and then come down to the $150,000, probably some things that turned up in that home inspection, but it's just tough to know. I just know it's really, a little bit tougher on the flood insurance front for homes like these older homes in that AE flood zone. But this was the lowest single-family home sale of the month of July, $150,000. So congrats to the buyers and the sellers, even with those tough insurance rates. Anytime you're getting a home for under $200,000 in Cape Coral these days is a pretty good buy, that's for sure, even if it does need some work there. All right, let's take a look at the lowest Gulf Access home sale. So again, Gulf Access, if you're not familiar, we have over 400 miles of canals here in the city of Cape Coral, and the majority of those are saltwater canals. So they're canals with boating access out to the Gulf of America, usually via the Caloosahatchee, the mouth of the Caloosahatchee River. So this home, once again, we're in the southeast, 2155 Southeast 20th Place. This home was on the market for a while, 246 days. The final list price on it was $400,000, and again, this one saw a pretty steep discount on it. It was sold for $300,000, so I would imagine that there was probably a few things that popped up in that inspection report. They maybe were under contract for a little bit more than that, $300,000, and then they needed to get some discounts on that based on the home inspection report. So 1816 square feet, built in 79, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It's on a good canal, nice canal over there. It's near Veterans Parkway, just off of 4 Mile Cove Preserve there, so pretty decent area, and pretty darn good access, actually. It's only maybe about 30 minutes out to open water from there. So to get a property like this for $300,000, again, even if it did require some work in there, anytime these Gulf Access homes, they dip under that $400,000 mark, they tend to sell fairly quickly. So whoever got this deal at $300,000 got themselves a pretty darn good deal for this Gulf Access house. But this looked to be mostly original to 1979, and I'm sure the flood insurance, again, was expensive over there, being a little bit older property in that AE flood zone. But congratulations to the buyers and the sellers. This was the lowest Gulf Access home sale, $300,000 right at the end of July. And that wraps it up for the lowest sales of the month. Let's get over to the fun ones. Let's look at the highest sales of the month in similar categories. All right, so the highest sales of the month of July 2025 for the entire city of Cape Coral. We're going to keep kind of the same format there. We'll start off with the highest condo, then we'll actually look at the highest non-Gulf Access home sale, and finish up with the highest Gulf Access home sale. The highest sale of the month is always a Gulf Access home. It just makes sense. Those properties are a little bit more valuable having those that access out to the Gulf. But the highest condo sale of the month of July was this one right here, and this is actually a pretty darn low price for the high condo sale. And we are in the middle of summer, so condos, as we're going to get into when we look at condos here, the pace of sales really slows down for condos in the summertime. We don't have as many of those buyers in the market. That's usually something we see a lot more activity in the winter and spring season. So it kind of makes sense that we wouldn't see too many condo sales, and therefore we wouldn't have too high of a condo sale for the highest sale last month. But let's take a look at this. 1795 4 Mile Cove Parkway, Unit 833. This is a direct Gulf access condo, and it has a deeded boat slip with a lift in it, which is always really nice to have that boat right behind your house and have a private slip where you can just keep your boat there all the time. And again, direct Gulf access, so there's no bridges to get out to open water. But this was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo built in 2004. Quite a few of these over there on that 4 Mile Cove canal, and the community is called Island Cove of Cape Coral. But this was just over 1,200 square feet, was listed at $365 and sold for $334. So we didn't get up over $400,000 for the highest condo sale this past month, and we've seen many months so far this year where we've gotten up over $1 million, usually over there in Tarpon Point or something like that. So to not breach that even $350,000 mark this past month, I think that's just kind of a sign of condos being a little bit slower in general in this market, but also the time of year for condos is just a little bit slower. But this, for all intents and purposes, looked like a really nice unit over there. It was on the market for a little over 2 months, 69 days. Listed $365, sold for $334,000, and that was the highest condo sale of the month for the entire city in July of 2025. Let's take a look at the highest non-Gulf access home sale. So again, the highest sale is always going to be a Gulf access home, so we're going to look at something that's not Gulf access and see where that price point is falling on the high side, and that's this one right here. Again, we're in the Southeast. We've been in the Southeast for every property so far. 318 Southeast 5th Avenue. This is a beautiful custom home. It was built just last year, 2024, just under 3,100 square feet. 4 bedrooms plus a den, 4 full bathrooms, and just a really extraordinary custom home over there in the Southeast. This was listed at $1.1 million. It was on the market just a little bit beyond 4 months, and sold somewhat close to list price. I mean, $1.15 million for being on the market that long at $1.1 million. It sold fairly close to list price, but this is kind of a specialty kind of product. This had a beautiful extra garage on it, a big RV garage. It had a beautiful outdoor living space, and of course it's just a really big custom home, again on a triple lot as well. So the lot was about 150% of the size of a normal Cape Coral lot. So it had a lot of things going for it here, and they found the right buyer there, and just over $1 million, $1,015,000. Sold right at the end of July, and that was the highest non-Gulf access home sale of the entire month. We did breach $1 million for that. We don't always get over $1 million for that category, but we did this past month. And gosh, it's been in the Southeast just like every other property we've seen so far. But let's take a look and see if that trend continues with the highest Gulf access sale, which is the highest overall sale for a residential piece of property this past month. And guess what? We're in the Southeast again. So every single property, all the low sales and the high sales have all been in the Southeast of the 4 quadrants. The Southeast was pretty active this past month. But this one is, again, a beautiful custom home, not brand new, but 5302 Malaluka Court. That's there in the Yacht Club area. If you're not familiar with that, that's the extreme Southeast, south of Cape Coral Parkway. Most of these homes, like this one, are direct Gulf access, so no bridges to get out. Once you're out into the river, you're out on the southern portion of the river near the mouth of the Caloosahatchee, so you're quick access out to the Gulf of America. Sorry, I'm still getting used to that. But nevertheless, this is a beautiful home, beautiful custom home. Wasn't brand new. 2021 was when it was built. 4 bedrooms, 6 baths. It had 4 and 2 half baths, 4 full baths, 2 half baths. Just over 3,200 square feet, so a big one, and boy was the outdoor living space just absolutely incredible on this property. Just had kind of a tiered open lanai that goes down to the dock. Not a whole lot of water frontage right there, but they've made really, really good use of it by basically taking that whole frontage and making it a dock space down there. So incredible views, incredible location, and a really, really beautiful home. And this was listed at $2.475 million. It was only on the market for 4 days. 4 days and almost $2.5 million, and it ended up selling for $2.325 million. So that's a pretty healthy sale. Again, just like condos, the Gulf Access home sales, kind of the number of sales go down in the summertime. There's just not as many of these buyers around in the summertime as there are in the winter and spring, so we don't see as many Gulf Access home sales. So to still have one almost reach $2.5 million this past month is a really healthy sign for this higher end Gulf Access home market here in the city of Cape Coral. But congratulations to the buyers and the sellers. That thing had just a really cool waterfall. I just love this outdoor living space on this house. But congrats to those buyers for picking up a really beautiful home. And $2.325 million was the highest overall residential sale in the entire city of Cape Coral in the month of July 2025. So that wraps up the high and low sales. So we're going to just start out with the statistics. I'm going to start out with, as I always do, with the overall kind of broader overall market statistics, and then we'll really start to break things down into different categories. So let's take a look at the overall stats of the Cape Coral real estate market, at least as they were put up here this past month in July 2025. All right, so the overall residential real estate market, we're going to look at a few different metrics here. I'm going to show you some graphs, and these are all 2-year graphs, so we're really going to be able to kind of compare what this past month's numbers look like compared to the last 2 years. We're going to start off with the total number of sales that happened. So this is, again, every residential property, every condo, townhome, everything from that $90,000 condo all the way up to that $2.4 million beautiful Gulf Access custom home there. So this includes everything that's a residential piece of real estate, except vacant lots. Of course, we're going to cover those separately here in a little bit. But take a look at this graph. Here's the 2-year graph. July of 2025, we sold a total of 468 residential properties in the entire city of Cape Coral. That's down a little bit from June's number. In June, we sold 512 properties. But you can kind of tell this graph, the pattern on this 2-year graph. Obviously, we have a lot more sales that occur in our busier season. Our population goes up by about 30% in the winter and spring, so it's naturally we're going to see a lot more activity in the first and second quarter of the year, and then that kind of drops off in the third and fourth quarter as we get into the slower summer months, and then of course the season with the holidays and stuff, with Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's and all that kind of stuff, and then it, of course, peaks back up after the first of the year. But at least compared to the last 2 years, 468 sales for the month of July is not too far off. We had a little bit better July last year. In July of 2024, we sold 522 properties, but back in July of 2023, we sold 452. So we're doing better in July of this year than we did in July of 2023. But if you kind of take the first 7 months of the year so far, just to give kind of a broader look at what the activity has been like. We've sold a total of 3,383 properties thus far in 2025, the first 7 months, January through July. Last year, the first 7 months, we had sold 3,630 residential properties. So we are just short by about 247 properties so far this year. We're off last year's pace by about 247. Which turns out to about 6.8%. So our demand, roughly, if you want to take that into consideration, our demand is down about 6.8% from where it was this time last year. But that's not really a whole heck of a lot. But let's take a look at the median price, because our median price is certainly different than it was this time last year. Here's the 2-year graph for median price. And again, this is taking into consideration everything from that $90,000 condo to the $2.4 million Gulf Access home. You take them all up, you line them up from the cheapest to the most expensive. Right in the middle is the median price. And here's the 2-year graph for that median price. We hit a fresh low this past month. $350,000 was the median price for July of 2025. That's down from June's number of $360,500. And you can kind of see, we are in a gradually declining market. So in spite of the large amount of inventory that we've had on the market, and we're going to get into that here in just a second, the softening of the pricing has been gradual. And I think that's a broader sign of this market just kind of slowly correcting. We're not crashing, we're not doing anything, we're slowly correcting for a really overheated market that we had coming out of 2020. We were already a pretty strong market in 2019, and then we had the pandemic, and kind of our state was open and a lot of other states were not, and people were working from home, so they figured, let's move to Florida. So we had a huge surge in demand after that pandemic that really increased those prices, and so we needed to kind of have a slowdown and a correction to kind of account for that, and that's what this graph tells me has been happening over the course of the last 2 years. But if you look back to July of 2024, the median price back then was $380,000. So just 12 months ago, the average price sold, or the average home or residential property sold for about $30,000 more. So just in 12 months, we're down about 7.9%. And if you go back 2 years, July of 2023, the median price was $405,000. We were over $400,000 in July of 2023. So that 2-year price correction comes out to about 13.6% or $55,000. So we've got this kind of healthy correction going on here, and we're going to look at the inventory next. We kind of peaked out earlier this year, and the inventory has been coming down. I think there's some reasons for that. We're going to get into that, but I think the majority of our inventory issues appear to be behind us, or at least we're on the back side of that. We got a little bit more work to do. So, will the softening of prices continue? Probably a little bit, but I think the worst may be behind us, especially if we can get some interest rates dropped here later this year for mortgages. And gosh, if DeSantis gets his wish and we get property taxes taken away, at least for the primary residents down here, that's going to change the whole game. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But let's take a look at the inventory again. This is the entire residential real estate market for the entire city of Cape Coral. And this is the 2-year graph of inventory. Now, it's important to point out the numbers that I'm about to give you are the total number of active listings that were on the market at some point during these months. It doesn't represent what's currently on the market right now. It's just the way that our MLS system kind of can gauge the activity. It's harder to kind of pinpoint at any given time where the market was. So we're just taking the entire month and any active status during that month. So in other words, some of these properties came off the market, some of them sold, some of them went pending, some of them expired, things like that. So then just keep that in mind as I give you these numbers, and that goes for every category that we're going to look at today. But total number of properties on the market at some point during the month of July was 3,972. That's down a fair amount from June's number 4,293. And as you can tell here, we peaked out in February. In February, we had 4,970 properties on the market at some point in February 2025, and now we're down to 3,972. So that inventory spike really went up quickly, and now it's coming back down quickly as we're getting into these slower summer months, and that represents about a 20% decrease in inventory just since February. There's 998 fewer properties on the market now versus February, and that works out to 20%. Now, if you look back a year ago, you can kind of see we had a little bit of a spike, and then it came back down from spring down into summer of last year. In July of last year, we had 3,879. So we're just slightly off of where we were this time last year, and that's really, I think, a testament of the resilience of our real estate market, because we were getting a little nervous there as those inventory numbers kept going up rapidly after the first of the year, really from December to January and then February. And then now we've made a lot of progress since that inventory peaked out in February. But just 1 year ago, that represents about a 2.4% increase from July last year to July of this year. And of course, if you look back in July of 2023, there was only 3,121 properties on the market. So we're still up about 27.2%, or about 851 properties. We have 851 more properties on the market now than we did 2 years ago in July of 2023. But again, these are numbers of any active listing at any given point during that month. As of this morning, we've got only 3,211 properties on the market. So that 3,972 versus 3,211, you can kind of extrapolate on that. It's not quite as bad as that makes it look, but again, that's the only way that our system tracks these statistics. So that's the long and short of the overall real estate market. Now let's start to break these numbers down into different categories, because we've got some categories that are doing better than others, and we're going to, of course, jump into that next. But we're going to start off with the biggest category that we have in the residential Cape Coral real estate market, and that is single-family homes that are not on any body of water. Let's get into those next. Okay, so off-water, non-waterfront, single-family homes. Again, this is the biggest category that we have in the city of Cape Coral. We've got a lot of single-family homes here, and most of them aren't on the water, even though we've got our fair share of waterfront properties here in the city of Cape Coral. But we're going to keep that same pattern, so we're going to start off looking at the total number of sales for this category. And this category, we put up 307 sales last month, so 300 non-waterfront single-family homes sold in the month of July 2025 for the entire city of Cape Coral. That's down just very slightly from June's number. June, we were 324 sales. And you can see this pattern kind of follows the broader pattern of the residential real estate market, but actually this category probably has the least amount of fluctuation between the busy season of the winter and spring, the first and second quarter of the year, versus the slower season of the third and fourth quarter of the year. So we still have a reasonably decent number of properties that sell in this category, even in the dog days of summer, and which we are currently in right now. But 307 sales. If you take that back to last year, at this time last year in July of 2024, we sold 358. So we are down a little bit from last year's number, but if you go back 2 years ago, July of 2023, we sold 308 properties that month of July 2023. So we're only one property off the mark from where we were 2 years ago. So if you take all of these numbers, again, the first 7 months of the year, January through July, we've sold a total of 2,125 single-family homes that weren't on the water. We had a pretty strong year last year. We still saw a lot more new construction sales in 2024, so the numbers were bolstered a little bit last year. So the first 7 months of 2024, we ended up selling 2,340. So we're about 215 properties short of the pace that we set last year, which represents about a 9.2% reduction in overall purchasing activity. But let's jump over to the median price, because I think that kind of follows up with what the median price has been doing. And again, here's the 2-year graph. This is it looks very, very similar to the overall real estate market, but we did hit a fresh low for this 2-year chart this past month in July. The average non-waterfront single-family home, or the median price for that category, was $335,000. That's down about $5,000 from June's number. 340,000. But again, we see over the course of the last 2 years, and really the last 18 months, really mostly, we've had this kind of gradual step down in pricing. Last year in July of 2024, the median price for this category was $362,250. So we're down about 7.5% in terms of the median price. It represents about $27,250. The average single-family off-water home sold for about $27,000 less this past month versus July of 2024. If you take it back 2 years ago, I think the numbers from 2023 to 2024, the reduction was much less noticeable than this past 12 months. But the median price back in July of 2023 was $375,000. So we're down a full $40,000 from 2 years ago. It represents about a 10.7% correction. So 10.7% in 2 years, and 7.5% of that was just in the last 12 months. So we've definitely made some progress on correcting and kind of slowing down that really overheated market. We'll probably see a few more points of price reductions coming, at least until we fully get that inventory down. And I think demand's going to kind of pick up a little bit again, especially for this category, because a lot of the buyers in this particular category are buying with mortgages. So as those interest rates come down for mortgages, the purchasing power of those buyers goes up, and we should see a little bit more demand in this category once those interest rates get down a little bit. So hopefully we see that later this year. But let me just kind of break these individual numbers down just a little bit. You know, out of these, again, we had 307 of these sales, off-water single-family homes this last month. Of those, about 38% or 117 had pools. So a little bit over a third of the properties had pools. And if you look at the pricing for those pool homes, the median price for a pool home was $400,000 even. So again, overall $335,000. Just homes that had pools, the median price was $400,000. If you take away those pool homes and just looked at the non-pool homes, the median price for that category was $320,000. So it's still, a pool home is roughly, on average, about $80,000 more, at least in this category, versus the homes that did not have pools. So again, it kind of makes a little bit of sense to put in a pool, especially if you can do so for 60 grand or something like that. Let's say you put a $60,000 pool in, or even a $65,000 pool in. The statistics suggest that you should be able to get $80,000 more for that property by having that pool on there versus not having that pool. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I also want to touch on new construction. About a third of these sales were brand new construction homes. And what I'm categorizing as brand new construction is something that was finished in either 2024 or 2025. But 36%, or about 110 of the 307 sales, were new construction homes. Now, the vast majority of these new construction homes did not have pools, and so it kind of makes sense that the median price for new construction homes was about $348,000. So roughly, if you say that none of the new construction homes had pools, at $348,000 were about $28,000 more than the average resale property. So those new construction homes are still moving through. I don't think they're putting as many of them in the ground these days, so I think that number will start to go down as it makes a little more sense to buy resales versus new builds. The builders have kind of slowed down because they can't quite keep up with the pricing of the resales, but at least that covers the median price for non-waterfront single-family homes. Let's look at the inventory. Again, 2-year graph on the inventory. Again, this is the number of anything that was active on the market at some point during these months. So 2,220 properties were on the market at some point during the month of July. And again, as of this morning, there's only 1,743 current actives. But that just represents, that 2220 represents anything that was on the market at any given point. So some of them sold, some of them came off, some of them expired, etc. But 2220 is down again from June's number of 2360. And again, we peaked out in February in this category for the total number of inventory, or total amount of inventory. And as you can see, we kind of ramped up as we got into the end of 2024 and the first month or two of 2025. That inventory really spiked up. And February peaked out at 2726. So we've made a lot of progress since that high point. We've sold a lot of properties, but we've also finally gotten some sellers of the mindset that if they can't get their price, they need to just yank that thing off the market so we can turn this market around quicker. But we've taken about 506 of these properties off the market since February. That represents about an 18.6% reduction in overall inventory. So we're doing a lot to get a lot of this stuff off the market. It kind of remains to be seen how much of this will come back on as we get into next season. My gut tells me we're not going to be quite as dramatic as we were this past year. We'll certainly go up in inventory. I think we'll continue to go down for the rest of the summer. But as we get into the final few months of the year, it'll probably tick back up and then go up a little bit as we get into January and February of next year. But hopefully we don't hit any fresh highs. And I don't think that we will. We'll just have to keep an eye on that. But if we kind of look at this number, this 2220 versus last year, we're almost dead even with July of 2024. We had 2,215 properties on the market in July of 2024, so we only got 5 properties more on the market this year versus this time last year. But if you look back 2 years ago, there was only 1,882 of these properties on the market in July of 23. So we got about 338 more properties on the market now. It represents about an 18% increase from 2 years ago. So we got a little bit more work to do, and I think we will continue to make a lot of progress in the remaining months of at least the summer and the start of fall. Remains to be seen if we go up. I'm certain that we'll go up as we get into December and January. The question will be is how much it will go up. So how many of these properties that have come off the market so far since February have sellers that have the intention of putting them back on when we get into our busier season. So we'll just have to keep an eye on that and take a look. But I think the worst may be behind us. and we're making some really good progress on our inventory because it was really high there for a while. But that wraps things up for off-water single-family homes. Let's jump over to everyone's favorite category in Cape Coral, and that's the Gulf Access homes. Let's take a look at those homes. Okay, so Gulf Access single-family homes. Cape Coral is world famous for our Gulf Access single-family homes, and everybody likes that waterfront. So again, we're going to be talking about anything that's a single-family home that's either on, a big body of water like the actual river itself, or more than likely on a canal with saltwater access out to the Gulf of America. So we've got plenty of those properties, and as you can kind of tell in this chart, just like with condos, we really sell a lot more of these properties in the first and second quarter of the year versus the third and fourth. A lot of these buyers are seasonal buyers, so naturally they're down here when the weather is really, really nice in the winter and the spring, and then they tend to go back home up north maybe when the weather's a little bit nicer in the summertime up north. But let's take a look at the 2-year graph for the number of monthly sales. July of 2025, we sold 71 Gulf Access homes in the city of Cape Coral. That's down 10 from June's number. In June, we sold 81. And the high point this year was actually the previous month, May. So May's number was 102. We breached 100 sales that month in the month of May, and actually the high point for last year on this graph was May of 2024 too, when back then we'd sold 110. So as you can plainly see from this chart, the pattern is a lot of sales in the first and second quarter, not as many sales in the summer and the fall. But actually, so far in June and July, we've been doing better than June and July of 2024. So for instance, July of this year, again, we sold 71. July of last year in 2024, we only sold 63 that month last year. So we've had a couple of early summer months that have done a little bit better than years past. If you look back 2 years ago to July of 2023, we only sold 61 back then. So we're a full 10 ahead of where we were 2 years ago and a full 8 from where we were last year. So we've beat July's pace of the last 2 years. But if you look at the overall year so far, the first 7 months of the year, we've sold 541 Gulf Access homes in 2025 in the first 7 months. And if you look at last year, the first 7 months of 2024, we had sold 586 of these homes by that point. So we're down in terms of sales activity by about 7.7%. And that kind of fits right in with the overall market that we looked at. That's roughly the pace of the entire real estate market taken together, the residential real estate market taken together. So Gulf Access single-family homes, the pace has slowed at a slower rate than those off-water single-family homes that we just covered. So pretty interesting. We'll see what the rest of summer brings for these Gulf Access homes. Hopefully the activity stays a little bit healthy, and we may even catch up with last year's pace, because so far we're selling a few more homes this summer than we did last summer so far. But let's look at the median price. So again, this takes into consideration everything from that $300,000 Gulf Access home sale all the way up to that almost $2.4 million Gulf Access home sale. And as you can kind of tell from this 2-year chart, month to month, this number bounces around quite a bit. And it makes sense when you think about it. If there's only 63 or 81 or 71 homes in a given sample size, you may sell a few more of those $2.5 million homes in 1 month versus another month, and that obviously would drag up that median price up and down. So you kind of have to read in between the lines in this. But if we take those 71 sales last month, the median price for those Gulf Access home sales was $658,000. That's down quite a bit from the previous month, $730,000. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean the market went down that much in just 1 month. It just means it fluctuates quite a bit from month to month. So again, read between the lines here. You kind of have to average this out a little bit. But if we take it back just strictly on the numbers 12 months ago in July of 2024, this median price was $705. We were over $700 just 12 months ago. So it represents, just by those numbers, about a $47,000 reduction in average pricing, which represents about a 6.7% reduction in median price. Now, if you look back in July of 2023, the number was $715,000. So that represents about a $57,000 $100,000 reduction, or about an 8% over the course of 2 years. Now, the high point on this chart was February of 2024, and that was 852. We were over $850,000 that month for median price. So again, you kind of have to read between the lines, average these out a little bit. I think if you did that over the course of 2 years, I think the average property, Gulf Access single family home, is probably down in pricing by around $100,000. I think that roughly works out to somewhere between 12 and 15%, I think, is the overall correction that we've had in this segment of the market over the course of the last 2 years. And you know, some segments are doing a lot better. Some of the newer construction Gulf Access homes are still selling fairly close to at or over $1 million in many places. There are many places of the Southwest and even the Southeast and the Northwest where properties are selling for over $1 million. And then, you know, occasionally we're getting under $400,000. There's not too many homes that got under $400,000 over the course of the last 6 months or so, but we're seeing some of those $350,000, $370,000 Gulf Access home sales. So there's a pretty wide range here, and that's why I say you kind of have to average things out and kind of read between the lines here. But again, I think over the course of 2 years, I think we've corrected about 12 to 15%, and that doesn't take into consideration inflation. So if the real inflation rate's been 4% for the last 2 years, you know, taking that into consideration, you're tacking on another 8% to that 15%, and it starts to look like we've had a little bit more of a serious correction, which is what this segment of the market needed, just like all the other segments. I mean, we really got hot and heavy there after the pandemic for these Gulf Access homes. Even the high-end stuff was getting really, really high there for a while, and it ramped up quickly, and we needed to cool off. So I think it's a good sign that we've seen that correction. But let's look at the inventory, because the reason that we had the correction that we've had over the last 2 years is because the inventory has been gradually increasing. And it's a little more exacerbated, I think, in this category versus a lot of the other ones. So take a look at this 2-year chart for the inventory. And again, these numbers represented on this chart are any active listing that was on the market at any given point. They count that. So if it's went off the market, it's still counted as one of these numbers. So there was 794 active Gulf Access homes for sale at some point during the month of July of this year, 2025. Now, that doesn't mean we have 794 on the market right now. Actually, as of this morning, we have 672 Gulf Access homes on the market in Cape Coral. So it's always a little bit higher, but that's how they measure this metric. So 794. Big reduction from June's number. June, we had 900 properties on the market at any given point in June. And we peaked out, you know, the overall and some of the other categories, we peaked out right around February. But actually this chart, we peaked out for Gulf Access single family homes in April of this year. We had 1,090 properties, so just under 1,100 properties on the market in April. So we're down 296 properties just since April. That's 27.2%. We've reduced inventory by 27.2% in just 3 months. That's really, really good sign. I'm glad that we're seeing those kind of reductions because we needed that. Now, how much of that is shadow inventory? In other words, how much is going to come back on? Because again, as we saw from the number of sales and the activity, we see a lot more sales in the winter and spring. So come January, hopefully we continue to do more, you know, we make some more progress on the inventory front, and the number of properties available continues to go down for the rest of this year, so that when we get to December and January, when it inevitably does come back up, it doesn't come back up very significantly. So we've made a lot of progress. We're going to keep an eye on that to see how much more progress we can make before inventory ticks back up a little bit, and then we'll kind of have to watch that and see how far it ticks back up. I think just the way everything kind of feels right now, again, you know, I don't really have too much scientific evidence behind this, but it feels like that April number is hopefully the peak for this particular market cycle. Hopefully we're not going to hit that 1090 properties on the market in winter or spring of 2026. But if you tune in every single month, I'll keep you up to speed on how that's going. But let's kind of look at the last couple of years. So we're almost on par with where we were in July of 2024. There were 761 properties. Again, that was before that big ramp up at the end of last year and the beginning of this year. So we're only up about 4.3% from where we were this time last year. About 33 more Gulf Access homes on the market in July of 2025 versus July 2024. Now, if you look 2 years ago when our inventory was still pretty low, there was only 565 Gulf Access homes on the market back in July of 23. I think some of that was probably a little bit due to the hurricane and the previous, although it was, getting almost to 12 months before that was the hurricane, but I still think some of the inventory was off the market because of that Hurricane Ian in late 2022. But nevertheless, July 2025 versus July 2023, we're up about 229 properties, so about 40.5%. So really, really good sign that we've taken 27.2% off the inventory mark from April in just 3 months. Let's do another 27.2% in the next 3 months. That would be really, really nice because we need to get that number still down. We've got some more work to do on the inventory front in all categories, but definitely Gulf Access homes as well. So that's the story with Gulf Access home sales. Let's jump over to condos and townhomes, because condos and townhomes this market cycle have been probably hit the hardest of any other category. So let's take a look at those. All right, condos and townhomes, I lump everything together. So whether it's a high-rise condo, low-rise, mid-rise, townhome, attached villa, basically anything that's not a single-family home or multifamily like a duplex or something like that is wrapped into this category of condos and townhomes, because this is not, this is probably the smallest segment of the Cape Coral real estate market, and it very much follows in line with the Gulf Access home market in the terms of the activity that we see for these condos is much more prevalent. The activity is higher, much higher in the first and second quarter of the year versus the third and fourth quarter. Naturally, condo buyers, there tend to be a lot more seasonal folks, just like the Gulf Access. We have more retirees, maybe that have two homes, maybe a summer home up north and a winter home, or winter residence or condo down here. So we see that activity much higher in the first and second quarter. But let's take a look at that activity. This is the number of sales in any given month over the course of the last 2 years. And again, exactly what I'm saying. I mean, it really peaks high about March, usually about every year. March is really our highest condo sales activity is in March. And then it kind of comes back down as we get into the summer. And so we're down as we anticipated we would be so far this summer. There was only 39 condo and townhome sales this past month in July of 2025. And that's actually up from June's number. In June, there was only 36. So we had 3 more in July versus June. So, we're doing all right. We're about on pace with where we were last year. Actually, July of 2024, there was 39 sales. July of 2023, only 31. So we've had roughly the same July this year as we've had last year. But if you take everything into consideration, the first entire 7 months of the year so far, 312 total condo sales so far in the first 7 months. In 2024, the first 7 months, we had sold 333 condos and townhomes by then. So again, we've sold about 21 fewer condos and townhomes so far this year versus last year. Represents about a 6.3% reduction in overall sales activities. But the flip side of that is the condo market has been softening more than any other category in terms of the prices. So let's look at the median price. I picked trash day at the Guthrie household to do the market report, so hopefully that's not too loud in the background. But nevertheless, median prices for condos and townhomes. Let's take a look at the 2-year chart. And again, like I just said, we've had more of a correction in the condo market than any other category right now. And the median price this past month was a fresh low for this 2-year chart. $215,000 was the median condo price last month. As you can see, it kind of jumps around just like the Gulf Access homes. We're only talking 30 or 40 home condos that sell in any given month. We have a smaller sample size, so that kind of bounces up and down. So you kind of have to read between the lines on this a little bit versus some of the other categories with higher number of sales. But 215 was a fresh low. Previous month in June of 2025 was 222,500. Now, if you just take these hard numbers without averaging these lines out or anything, you go back to July of 2024, the median condo price was $277,000. So we're down $62,000. And when you're talking about a price point that's in the 200s, that represents a 22.4% reduction in pricing in just 12 months. And that last 12 months has been the bulk of this 2-year reduction in pricing. It's been the last 12 months that have really done the most damage to condo pricing. You go back 2 years ago to July of 2023, the number was 285,000. Believe it or not, a lot of the other segments of the market, the top of the pricing, when the pricing was going up, it peaked out in spring of 2022. For condos, it peaked out in spring of 2023. I don't really know why that is. I think maybe something to do with the hurricane. Maybe some people were feeling a little bit more secure in condos after Hurricane Ian versus the single-family homes. So we saw some of the higher-end sales happen more in the condo market versus some of these other places. But nevertheless, we're down about $70,000 from where we were 2 years ago. It represents about a 24.6% reduction in overall pricing. And I think you kind of have to average that out, but I still think the last 12 months we've probably corrected 18 to 20%, and the 2 years probably around 25%. So condos have been getting hit hard. The fees have been going up in condos. I think they've kind of made the big jump that they were going to make. I don't think we're going to continue to see huge spikes in condo association fees unless individual communities get into trouble or something like that. But we've got new requirements from the condo collapse that happened on the east coast of Florida, that Surfside collapse that happened a few years ago. In the wake of that, they changed some laws. Now any condo that has 3 stories or more, they're required to have funds set aside. They're required to collect and reserve funds for both engineering surveys that have to be done every 10 years after the building hits 30 years old. And then you also have to have funds set aside for if something comes back during those engineering surveys and says, hey, you got a foundational issue here you need to take care of. You need to have funds set aside by law now to go ahead and fix those issues so we don't have another situation like Surfside where a big condo building falls down and kills a bunch of people. So it's a very good thing. It's a very useful law. But when we kind of had the double whammy of that in some places, again, if you're talking about a 2-story condo building, that's not affecting it at all. But insurance has obviously gone up, just like everything has gone up. Maintenance costs have gone up, so these HOA fees have gone up a fair amount, especially coming out of really 2023 to 2024 is when we saw the big jump. So I think that's one of the reasons that it's putting a little bit of downward pressure on the demand for condos, and that's why we're seeing a larger price correction in the condo market versus a lot of the other segments of the market. But what I've been telling, especially when you're talking about now we're getting down to 200, we're getting down to a lot of condos available under $200,000. I've been telling the folks that are out there maybe a little bit discouraged, maybe they're first-time home buyers and they're seeing these prices and they're priced out of what they can afford right now, at least in the single-family home market. If you're looking to get in to a segment of the real estate market, you need to start looking at these condos, because even though these HOA fees are a little bit higher, a lot of times they cover things that you would pay for otherwise. Sometimes they're covering, your water and sewer, that bill's wrapped into it, your lawn and land maintenance, your pest control, partial insurance. So, they're covering the structure, they're covering flood insurance, things like that. So there's a lot that goes into a lot of these HOA fees. So even if it is $400 or $500 a month, if you can get into that and you have a lot of the expenses that you would otherwise pay be paid for with that $400 or $500 monthly HOA payment, it really starts to make sense for some of these first-time home buyers. And I'm seeing a lot of younger demographics get into the condo market because they can jump in on really good deals right now. So if you'd like to chat about that, I'd be happy to share some insights with you on that and show you kind of maybe some segments of this condo market where you can kind of jump in at a lower price point and start to build some equity in this Cape Coral real estate market. Because long term, the condo market, like everything else here in Southwest Florida, we're in a cycle right now, so the pricing are down. So the people that are buying right now are going to reap the most benefits when the prices inevitably start to come back up, and they will come back up because there's still plenty of people that want to be in Southwest Florida. We love the sunshine, we love the waterfront, we love it all. So long-term outlook for Southwest Florida is really, really bright. So if you can get into the condo market at a cheap price, $150,000, $160,000, hey, you're going to be in good shape here in a few years. So it's good to see this price correction a little bit. I know if you're a condo seller, you don't like to see this, but it's something that is kind of the natural order of things. because we did have kind of a ramp up in pricing, and now we've seen some softening in pricing along with some higher expenses that is driving that a little bit ahead of some of these other categories. But $215,000 was the median condo price last month. Let's look at the inventory. Again, made a ton of progress since the high point of this year, but we still got a lot of condos on the market. As you can see, I mean, the last 2 years, inventory has kind of spiked up in the first and second quarter, and then it's come back down. And it was a little more exaggerated this past year versus 2024. But we had 447 condos on the market at some point during the month of June. That's down from 447 is July's number. That's down from 486 in June. And the high point for this year was back in March. We had 577 properties on the market. So we've taken 130 condos off the market since March. That represents about a 22.5% reduction in inventory. Again, just like the Gulf Access homes, we're making a lot of progress taking some of this inventory off the market. It remains to be seen how many of these condos came off the market as we got out of that spring season into summer, and how many of these intend to go ahead and relist when it comes time to get a little more condo activity in the first quarter of next year. So we'll keep an eye on this, but my hope and kind of my gut feeling is we're going to probably continue to see a reduction in inventory as we get into the later summer months, and then it will go back up. The question remains is how much it will go back up once we hit December and January. You know, it feels like, especially if they can get some interest rates down later this year for mortgages, it feels like maybe that 577 back in March was the high point for inventory for this market cycle, and we're not going to reach that come 2026. So we're going to be talking about this on the monthly market report come July of 2026. We can say, hey, that inventory didn't get back up to where it was, so we're on the downhill slope of this inventory issue that we've had. So we got some more progress to make on it, but we've made a lot of progress so far in the last few months. If you just take this back to last year, this is the only category we've got fewer properties on the market now than we did last year. So July of 2024, we had 458 properties. Again, we have 447 this month. So we've got just about 11 fewer condos on the market now versus this time last year. If you look back 2 years ago, of course, inventory was much lower back in July of 2023. There was only 368. So we're higher than we were 2 years ago, but we're actually lower than we were this time last year. And so hopefully we can make maybe some more progress to the point where we're going to be at a fresh low on this 2-year chart later this summer and early fall. So we'll just have to keep an eye on it. But it's good that we've made 22.5% reduction in inventory just since March of this year. We got some more work to do on that. But now again, that 447, that doesn't mean there are 447 condos on the market right now. That just means at some point during the month, there were 447 different properties on the market with an active status. So some of them sold, some of them expired, some of them came off the market, things like that. And actually, as of this morning, there were 389 total active condos on the market in the city of Cape Coral. So that's the long and short story of condo and townhome market in Cape Coral. Let's jump over to vacant lots, and then we're going to finish up the statistics portion of this with rental properties. All right, let's keep it going with vacant residential lots, and I'm going to specifically be talking about non-waterfront lots. We really don't have very many, especially in the summertime. We don't have very many waterfront. I'll touch on them kind of briefly when we get into the median price, but we don't have really enough to kind of make it worth putting charts out because they're going to bounce all over the place and you're not going to have a really good idea of what the pricing looks like anyway. So focusing on non-waterfront vacant residential lots, and we'll start off with the number of sales, and take a look at this. This is the 2-year chart on the monthly number of vacant off-water lot sales. We hit a fresh low last month in July of 2025. We only sold 56 vacant off-water residential lots. That's down from 76 sales in June. And obviously we've consistently gone down since July of 2023. We've been on a gradual decline in terms of the activity. Back in July of 2023, we had 169 sales. Last July, in July 2024, there were 84 sales. So to go from 84 sales last July to 56 this past month in July of 2025, Obviously, we are on the downslope in terms of the demand of these lots. I think that can really be attributed to mostly these production builders not buying as many lots right now. You're not seeing, because construction costs have seemed to have remained somewhat static and somewhat higher, especially with the inventory issues we've had with the resales. We're pricing these production builders out of the market in some cases. With these resales, it makes a lot more sense to go ahead and buy a resale property versus buy a brand new property for what these builders are able to sell for. So we're seeing a lot less inventory, and that means the builders are not building as many, which means they're not buying as many lots to build those new houses on. So I think that's just kind of makes sense that we're seeing that gradual decline over the last 2 years. The first 7 months of the year so far, we've sold 553 vacant residential lots. In the first 7 months of 2024, we had sold 779. So whereas we're down 6, 7, 8% in some of these other categories of condos and single-family homes and things like that, the vacant lot sales, we've seen 226 fewer sales this first 7 months this year versus the first 7 months in 2024, which represents about a 29% decline in overall purchasing activity for these lots. And you would think that would mean these prices are going down, but take a look at this 2-year chart for the median price for these off-water vacant residential lots. I mean, that's about as flat of a chart as you're going to see. Certainly, it's been very, very flat in terms of pricing for the last couple of years. And actually, the median price for these off-water vacant residential lots was $45,000. That's down just very slightly, $46,000 in June. But it was $45,000 back in May. So it's been very, very flat, with the exception of a couple of months here and there that have been a little bit higher, a little bit lower. Overall, I'd say it's right around those mid-40s, been consistent for the last 2 years. Actually, if you look back at July of 2024, it was $45,250, so right at the same price basically. And July of 2023, it was $42,000. So a little bit less, but again, that number has kind of bounced around a little bit and remained pretty consistent in the mid-40s. Now again, these are off-water sales, which means, and the vast majority of the sales, just because of the sheer number that are still available, are in the Northeast and the Northwest, which is why you're seeing these mid-40s prices for the median price. If you just took everything south of Pine Island Road, that number would roughly double. Usually the lots down there that have central water and sewer in the Southeast and the Southwest, they're selling roughly anywhere between $85,000 and $100,000 on average down there. So we're seeing a lot more vacant residential lot sales in the Northeast and the Northwest in those areas that are still on well and septic systems. And that's why the median price is so low, because you're not going to find a $45,000 lot in the Southeast or the Southwest with central water and sewer. They just don't exist. It's almost double that. But that's the median price. It's been, even though the demand has gone down significantly in the last couple of years, the median prices remain the same. And I think that's just a function of these sellers willing to just sit on these properties out there. If they've got them priced reasonably well, it still might take a year to sell these properties, and they're content with doing so because they don't have really high carrying costs. So they're not a lot of motivated lot sellers out there to make these big reductions to kind of artificially drive that demand up and see these number of sales kind of go up. So they're sticking to their guns, and good for them. They're still getting eventually. It's taken a long time to sell these lots. I know it's very difficult for me to sell lots recently, but the sellers that are kind of sticking to them eventually are roughly getting the same price now as they were a year ago. I told you I would mention the Gulf Access lots. There was only 3 Gulf Access lots. 3 Gulf Access residential lots that sold last month. There was one in the Southeast, one in the Southwest, and one in the Northwest. And the one in the Southeast sold for $275,000. The one in the Northwest sold for $310,000, and the one in the Southwest sold for $460,000. So that's why I say I'm not going to really show you a chart on that, because it would be all over the place when you're only talking about 3 Gulf Access lot sales in July. It's going to be much different month to month. Now, if we're talking about freshwater lots, just to touch on those really quick, there was 31 freshwater lot sales. Most of those, the vast majority of those, were in the Northeast and the Northwest. And guess what? The median price of those 31 freshwater canal lot sales was $45,000. It was identical to the overall off-water median price. So again, there's only 31, so it bounces up and down. Certainly there's some freshwater lots up there that can get into the 60s. Occasionally they might get down into the 30s and maybe even the 20s, depending on if there's some environmental issues with them or what have you. But overall, $45,000 was the median price for off-water single-family home residential lots last month. And let's take a look at the inventory. The inventory is kind of the opposite in these lot sales, or these available lots, versus a lot of the other residential categories. So take a look at this 2-year chart. In spite of having a lower number of sales now than we did 2 years ago, we've got lower inventory. There was, again, 1,251 vacant lots for sale at some point during the month of July 2025. That's up very slightly from June's number of 1,246, and May's number was identical, 1,246. So it's up a little bit from this time last year. July of 2024, we had 60 fewer on the market, 1,191, so we're up about 5%. But you can kind of see it kind of went up and then came back down, so it's kind of remained somewhat flat over the course of the last 12 months. But look back 24 months ago in July of 2023, 1,434 vacant lots on the market back then. So we're down about 183, or 12.8% in terms of the inventory now versus what it was 2 years ago. So in spite, doesn't really make that much sense, but in spite of the demand being way down, the inventory is actually less now than it was 2 years ago, and the median price has stayed the same for the last couple of years. So that's the vacant off-water residential lot market here in the city of Cape Coral. Let's just touch on rental properties real quick, and then we're going to get into advice for buyers and sellers in the current real estate market. All right, let's briefly touch on rental properties and rental prices right now. I haven't covered it for the last few months, so I thought it would be good to kind of cover these because it does affect the broader residential real estate market. And I think there's some correlations to some of the amount of inventory that we've seen, these reductions in inventory that we've seen over the last few months. But let's start off with just look at the median rental price. Again, this is everything. So these are condos, 1-bedroom condos, all the way up to 5-6-bedroom single-family homes on the water or something like that. This is the overall residential rental median price for the last 2 years by month. So take a look at this. Very gradual decline from 2 years ago, and we've hit $1,900 was the median rental price for properties that rented on the open market this past month in July of 2025. That's down almost $100 from June's number. June's number was $1,995. If you look at 12 months ago in July of 24, that median rental price was $2,095, so we're down about 9.3% in average rental prices now versus this time last year. And if you look back 2 years ago, that median rental price was all the way up at $2,275 dollars a month. And so we are down about 16.5% in the last 2 years in terms of the amount of rent on average that these properties are out there collecting. And I think that's just, again, a function of the inventory. Let's jump over, there were 161 properties rented in July, so there's still a healthy number of properties renting out there. But again, that median rental price is down to $1,900 this last month. But let's look at the inventory. Take a look. I think this tells a really big story. And I think we're finding out where some of this inventory and some of these other categories of for sale properties are going. Again, we've made a lot of progress. We haven't necessarily had a big spike in the number of properties that have sold, but we've seen a lot of properties be taken off the market, and our inventory in some categories is down 22, 27+% in the last just 3 or 4 months. And I think some of those properties, as they've come off the market, naturally are turned into rental properties, and so this is why you're seeing this big spike in the last few months. But take a look at this. This is the 2-year chart for the number of available rental properties on the MLS right now. And I'll tell you something, these don't even take into consideration some of these big, high occupancy apartment complexes that are starting to come online, places like the Bimini Basin down there, places like the Cove at 47, some of the higher end stuff there certainly, but there's other projects around here with 300-400 door complexes that are going to be coming online, and that's going to put some more downward pressure on the rental rates. Now, we needed that to happen because we didn't really have affordable workforce housing here in the city of Cape Coral, especially after the prices had kind of gone up. And I don't necessarily think it's a great sign that the average rental price 2 years ago was $2,275. I think for affordability reasons, we needed that to get to some semblance of affordability for a lot of the workforce folks that live here in the city that kind of support our infrastructure around here. But nevertheless, 1,153 properties on the market in July of 2025. That's up from 1,130 in June, but we had the big spike from May to June. In May, there was under 1,000, 979. So we went from 979 to 1,130 in just 1 month. And if you take this back 12 months to July of 2024, there was only 829 available rental properties back then. So we're up 324, or about 39%. 39% in just 12 months. If you take it back 2 years ago to July of 2023, there was only 650 rental properties. So again, that makes sense because that's why that rental rate was up there at $2,275. There was only 650 available properties. But now we're up 530 more properties on the market now versus 2 years ago. So our inventory is up 77%. And again, that doesn't even include a lot of these new apartment complexes that are coming online. So we'll probably continue to see rental rates dip down a little bit farther. It doesn't really, I have people coming to me all the time looking to buy properties, and they're looking for a really high rate of return on purchasing a property and putting it up for rent. And I'm just having to tell them, the numbers really aren't there right now. It's not a great time to buy a property with the intention of making a high ROI, or return on investment, by renting that property out as an investment. Now, long term, your ROI is going to be probably just fine because appreciation is going to take care of some of that. But just strictly as a cash flow investment right now, it's not a great time to be buying properties with the intention of making them annual rental properties. But I'm probably going to keep an eye on this because it's pretty interesting that we've had a pretty big spike here in the last couple of months in terms of the number of properties. But it just makes sense as we see some of these for sale properties come off the market that we're going to see a lot of them turn into rentals, and therefore the inventory on the rental side is going to go up. That's the story with rental properties right now, and that wraps up the statistics portion of this month's Cape Coral Real Estate Market Report. And now we're going to get into advice for buyers and sellers, and let's start off with advice if you're a buyer in this current Cape Coral real estate market. Okay, so if you're a buyer in the Cape Coral real estate market as it sits right now in August of 2025, what is my advice to you? What do you need to be paying attention to and thinking about as we get into the dog days of summer here? Well, inventory's been coming down. It's come down about, and depending on the category, over a fifth. So there's a fifth fewer properties on the market now versus even just 2 or 3 months ago. Gulf Access is down, the inventory is down 27+% from where it was just 3 months ago, actually. So there's still a lot of high inventory out there. You're still in a really solidly buyer's market right now. And we will be definitely for the rest of the year, probably for the first part of next year. We'll see what happens with interest rates, and we'll definitely see what happens if DeSantis gets any traction with this push to eliminate property taxes, because I think we have an entirely different real estate market if they get rid of property taxes, even for just primary residents. I think the demand will surge here because that takes care of a lot of people's fears about affordability and things like that from the increase in maintenance costs and insurance and things like that. If you don't have to pay taxes, you don't have to worry about those little bit increased costs for maintenance and insurance and things like that. So I think we're in a different real estate market if that happens. We'll see if that happens, or we'll see to what degree that happens at least. He seems to be pushing for it, but we'll have to keep an eye on it. But nevertheless, really strong buyer's market right now. The pricing is down depending on the category, 10 to 15% from where we were just 2 years ago, and majority of that, 7 or 8%, just in the last 12 months. So I don't think there's any rush to go ahead and jump into the market. You can. It's certainly a good time to buy right now in the real estate market. You can still negotiate yourself a really, really solid price, especially if you go out and kind of pick 2 or 3 properties that you really like and kind of pit these sellers off of one another. There's a lot of frustrated sellers out there right now because there is so much inventory. These sellers are having to get aggressive on the pricing. These sellers are going to have to make some concessions and make their property look really, really nice, because these buyers are just kind of getting pulled from every different angle with all of these shiny objects out there that are for sale. And if you can pick 2 or 3 properties that you really like and would be willing to move forward with, you can kind of pit those sellers off of one another and kind of negotiate yourself a really decent price, and find out which seller is going to be the one that offers you what you're wanting to pay for that property and the terms that you're looking to pay for it. So I think there's still plenty of opportunity in this Cape Coral real estate market, even though the inventory has come down. Some of that inventory will come back on the market as we get into the early months of next year, late months of this year. So we'll see it kind of tick back up. It'll probably continue to go down for the next few months, and then it'll probably pick back up as we get into the busier season of January, February. So we'll keep an eye on that. But nevertheless, hopefully we get some interest rates reduced on mortgages here in the 3rd and 4th quarter of this year. We'll have to keep an eye on that and see what's going on with that. But nevertheless, it's just a really good opportunity right now to come in and pick these properties up for 20-25% less than you could 2 years ago. So even though those interest rates are a little bit higher than maybe they were this time in 2023, although trying to remember back on it, I don't necessarily think their interest rates were all that different in 2023 versus now. Maybe they were a little bit lower back then, but nevertheless, still, when you're able to buy these properties for 20-25% less than you were 2 years ago, it's still a really, really solid opportunity. There's still tons of people that want to be here, so the long-term outlook for Southwest Florida in general, and specifically Cape Coral, is very, very good. So whether even if you do get in now, and even if there is another 2 or 3% further correction in pricing long-term, it's you're going to be in really, really good shape. Because there's still going to be, for the foreseeable future, a very healthy demand of people wanting to move to Southwest Florida and get all of our sunshine and our waterfront and all that good stuff. So if you are a buyer in this Cape Coral real estate market, give me a call, shoot me a text. I would love to hear about what you're looking for specifically, so I can point you in the right direction and kind of give you some one-on-one advice, some individual advice on what you need to focus on specifically so you can meet your goals. Love to hear from you. Call, text, or email me anytime. But advice for buyers, just enjoy this time while it lasts. Inevitably, our cycle will turn around again, and it'll be sellers' turn again. The sellers were in control there for a few years after 2020. Now it's your turn. It's been your turn for the better part of 18, 24 months now, and eventually that'll come to an end, and we will turn around. So, pick your right property. You still got plenty to take a look at out there. There's still plenty of inventory out there, but make your decision sooner than later before the market kind of turns around. If you're going to try to time the market exactly just so you can make that extra 1 or 2%, you're probably going to miss it. But that's my advice for buyers in the Cape Coral real estate market in August 2025. Get a hold of me. Love to chat with you about it, but that's what it looks like right now. Okay, so if you're a seller in the current Cape Coral real estate market, while it sits right here in the dog days of summer of August 2025, what is my advice to you, and what do you need to be paying attention to right now as we get into some of the slower parts of the year? Well, it remains a pretty strong buyer's market. You're still on the back foot as a seller. It's not a real fun time to be a seller. So if you're not absolutely needing to sell your property right now, you may want to think about taking a step back and maybe seeing if you can figure out how to stick around for another year, 2 years or so, because it will probably take at least another year before things turn around. We'll see. Hopefully, if these interest rates get down later this year, I think things will turn around a little bit quicker because our demand will go up. If DeSantis gets his way and we actually get some relief from property taxes, even just for primary residents, I think that's a whole different ballgame down here. I don't know if they're going to be able to make progress with that, and how much of that is kind of political bluster or how much of it could be a reality, but it seems like there's a lot of people behind that. And boy, if they make progress on that and we get some relief from property taxes, I think we're in an entirely different real estate market, and things are going to turn around really, really quick for sellers at that point, because there's going to be a very big surge in demand for properties down here. It helps affordability out tremendously, even in the face of maybe a little bit higher maintenance costs and higher insurance rates and things like that. If you don't have to pay taxes, I mean, you can buy a lot of things if you're saving that extra $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a year in property taxes. So that's a whole different story. We can talk about that if you want to. But nevertheless, it's a tough time to be a seller right now. The biggest driving of the market right now is price. If you're not priced right, you're not going to sell it. If you are priced right, you will sell it. And the proof's in the statistics. The average property right now is selling for a little bit over 97% of that final list price. Now, the issue is it's taking sellers 3, 4, 5, 6 reductions to find that right price. But once it gets to that right price, it's selling relatively close to list price. So there's still plenty of demand out there. You just got to separate yourself from the pack. And the glimmer of hope that we have, and what I kind of want you to take away from this as a seller right now, is our inventory is down in some cases over 25% from where it was just 3 months ago, especially Gulf Access homes. If you're a Gulf Access home seller, there's over 27% fewer properties on the market now than there was in March just 3 months ago. So there's really good signs. I think we need to make more progress on that inventory front. I think some of that is shadow inventory coming off that will be going back on as we get into the busier season in January, February. We'll keep an eye on that, but hopefully, and it kind of is my gut feeling that the inventory for this market cycle kind of peaked out in February, March of this year, and we're not going to hit those fresh highs next year like we did this year. So we'll just have to take a look at that, and we'll keep an eye. I'll keep you, make sure you're subscribed so you can see this report every single month, because I'll keep you informed with what's going on with it. But making some progress on the inventory front, got some more progress to make before things turn around. So get your property priced right. It's just, it goes without saying, you've got to have it looking absolutely fantastic. That curb appeal, that drive up has to be perfect. That first 5 seconds of walking through the front door is just so crucial. Those buyers are going to decide within that first 5 seconds whether or not they have a positive or negative overall view of your property. So if that property doesn't look good and it doesn't smell good, and there's something off about it in that first 5 seconds when you walk through that front door, you're shooting yourself in the foot. So you got to have it looking really, really good, and then you got to get it priced right. If you need some help on pricing that, if you need to get some advice on where you need to price that, give me a call, shoot me a text. I'd love to hear about your specific property. We can kind of look at that together. I'll go through the numbers with you and show you where we need to be to get that thing moved. I'm still selling a lot of listings, but I'm having to have kind of a come to Jesus talk with a lot of these sellers and say, hey, yeah, I know what your property was worth 2 years ago. It's not 2 years ago anymore. This is where we need to be. The buyers are in charge. You got to put this price. You got to kind of dangle that price out in front of them to get their attention away from all of this other inventory, because there is still too much inventory out there in spite of the reductions in inventory that we've made in the last few months. So if you're a seller, get a hold of me. I'll go through everything with you and give you the numbers on it, and we can kind of decide based on your individual situation if it's better to go ahead and do it now and sell it and kind of rip the Band-Aid off and get it gone, or if it's maybe a little bit better to kind of take a step back and wait this market cycle out a little bit, because it will come back. We still got plenty of properties, or plenty of people that want to be here in Southwest Florida. We've still got the sunshine and the waterfront and the great winters, and people are always going to want to come here. So long term, you're going to be just fine. Short term, we're in a little bit of a crunch right now. You were in charge there as a seller for a few years, and now it's the buyer's turn. So if you're able to wait it out, wait it out. If you got to sell right now, get a hold of me, and we'll look at those numbers and decide if it makes sense to move forward with getting that property moved, because we can sell it. It's just going to take probably a lower price than you're anticipating. That's my advice for sellers, at least in August 2025 in the Cape Coral real estate market. All right, so let's wrap up this Cape Coral real estate market report, and let's put a nice little bow on it and kind of give you a summary of what's going on in the overall market. If you didn't want to wait through that entire hour plus worth of market stats and reports, what's going on right now in a summary of the Cape Coral real estate market. Well, the biggest takeaway I want you to have for this month's report is we're making a lot of progress on the inventory front. We had fresh highs in overall market inventory that kind of peaked out in February, March, depending on the category. And we've made a tremendous amount of progress getting some of that inventory off. Yeah, we've sold some, but a lot of these is, I think sellers are finally realizing that they're not getting the prices that they were getting 2 years ago. It probably took them a long enough time, but so they're getting to the point now where they're taking their properties off the market. They're gonna wait out this market cycle. Incidentally, we've seen a big increase in inventory for rental properties. So some of these properties are getting taken off the market and put into the rental pool. And so there's going to be a little bit pain on that side as these rental rates kind of come back down. But overall, we're making really, really strong progress on the inventory front. We've got some more work to do, but this is a great last few months, especially for Gulf Access homes. We're down over 27% in the inventory for Gulf Access homes. Now, it remains to be seen how much of that is shadow inventory that's going to come back on the market when we get into the stronger season of the first and second quarter of 2026. So we'll see. Gut feeling is it will continue to probably go down for the next few months and then start to tick back up as it does every single year, no matter what the market is doing. My gut feeling is we're not going to hit those fresh highs that we hit this year. So I think, at least on the inventory side, we're on the downhill side of this market cycle. So we'll see what happens. I could be wrong on that. If I'm wrong on that, then we've got some more work to do on the pricing side. But I think with the level of inventory that's out there, we've still got a little bit more probably price reductions to go before this market turns around. But I think interest rates coming down hopefully later this year will help things out quite a lot. And my gosh, if the state government's able to get rid of property taxes, even for just primary residents down here, that's a whole different ball of wax, because this real estate market turns around overnight. If that happens, people are going to be knocking down our doors to buy property here in Southwest Florida if they don't have to pay property taxes on it. Makes those little higher maintenance costs and property insurance bills a little easier to swallow when you don't have to pay $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a year or more in property taxes. So that's a whole different story. If that ends up becoming a reality, it's going to be a very, very different market report than it was this month. But nevertheless, I think we're making strong progress. It's still going to continue to be a buyer's market for the foreseeable future, but things are going to turn around. There's still plenty of buyers sitting on the sidelines waiting for those interest rates to go back down, waiting for some clarity on what the economy is doing and things like that. Still a ton of people want to be here. So long-term, Southwest Florida and Cape Coral specifically is going to be just fine. I think Cape Coral was really kind of discovered after the pandemic. I think we kind of flew under everyone's radar for a long, long time there, and now people are kind of discovering that. And if you look, especially on the waterfront, especially golf access homes, you look at what you're able to buy here in the city of Cape Coral versus going to Lauderdale or Naples or Tampa or Sarasota or something. There's no comparison. The level of quality and the level of waterfront that you're able to get here for the price is unmatched anywhere. In many cases, especially like in Naples or something like that, you're going to be paying double what you're paying here for the same house, the same golf access house. So people are discovering that. More and more people are going to be moving to this area. I know some people don't like to hear that. They don't like to hear that we're going to be a busier and busier city as we get into the next 5 or so years. But nevertheless, it's an inevitability at this point. We've been found out, and our sleepy little town has awoken in a big, big way, and people are coming here in droves. So continue to happen. We've got a market cycle to get through right now. If you're a seller and you can hold off, it's a good time to hold off, maybe for another year or so. If you're a buyer, strike while the iron's hot. You know, in many cases, prices are down over 20% from where they were 2 years ago. You know, get into this market while you can. It will eventually turn around and become a seller's market once again, and we'll hit another boom just like we always do. So overall, made some good progress on the inventory front. Going to remain a buyer's market for the foreseeable future. If you are a buyer or a seller for that matter, give me a call, shoot me a text. I would love to hear about your individual situation, and we'll kind of go through your individual situation together, and I'll kind of point you in the right direction of what you need to be thinking about. If you are looking at selling right now and you do have to sell, we can get that number kind of tacked down where we need to be to get that property moved. If you are a buyer, you know, we can pick out the areas and everything that we need to target in order to get you the best deal and position you in a really good spot to get a really, really solid deal, because there's still really solid deals to be had out there right now, particularly for condos. But that's the summary of the Cape Coral real estate market as of August 2025. I appreciate your time. I know this is incredibly longer video. I don't usually do hour-plus long videos, and this one was actually a little bit longer than normal anyway. I'm about to lose my voice completely, and I think I might jump in that pool because it's pretty hot today. But nevertheless, I appreciate your time. Thank you for being here. If I can do anything for you, get a hold of me. Beyond that, make sure you're subscribed, not only just for these monthly Cape Coral real estate market reports, but also for all the fun things that we do on a weekly video basis with just useful information. Sometimes we're looking at really cool properties, different things like that. So I hope to have you around for the future. Thank you for being here once again, and I'll see you in the next video here in just a few days.
Like and subscribe. Just kidding.